Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Wizard101. So today we are gonna go over which school is the best school for Max. Now, this is a heated topic, and to be honest with you guys, there really isn't a best school for Max level. There is different categories which each school excels in, and it just depends on what you're gonna do in the game, whether it is farming, tanking, healing, or supporting. Like, it doesn't matter. There's a school that is the best for that. So at max level, there's certain schools that are better at doing things than other schools. So there is not necessarily a school that is better than all the others. It comes down to the different categories of the schools. So I'm going to be going over like different categories, and these categories is going to be one, the defensive category, which schools are the best at tanking and being able to resist the most damage for your team, which includes weaknesses, shields, etc. Health also plays a factor in the defensive category. And then we're going to go over to the second category, which is going to be which school is the best support school. And what I mean by supporting, I mean by healing, blading, etc. Like stunning can also be an example of supporting the team. Also, like getting rid of debuffs and stuff. So that's what I mean by supporting, which school is the best support school. And then we're going to go into the third category, the DPS category, or damage per second. Which school does the most damage? Which school is best for damage? We're going to go over each one of those categories and kind of give an explanation of each school for you guys, so you may learn and hopefully you guys get a better idea of these schools for the max level and which one's the best to use for these different categories. So the first category I'm going to go on is defensive category. And I'm going to start by going from the worst school all the way to the best school in each category. So this video is going to be pretty lengthy, but I'm just going to go through and explain for each school on why I decided to put them there. So for the first school on the list, for the number 7th spot, it has the worst one in this category. For the defensive category is Storm. So I am on my Storm Wizard. Storm is the worst for defense. Storm is just terrible when it comes to defense. They have the worst resistance, worth health in the game. It's just hard to defend your allies and yourself as a Storm Wizard compared to all the other schools. So that is why Storm is number 7. So let's go ahead and move on to number 6 now. Alright guys, for number 6 we have Myth. So Myth is similar to Storm. They have like the one of the least amount of health in the game. Like they hardly have any health as well. As you guys can see, my max level Myth here has 6.7k, but he has paradox gear, so he should be around 7k with full not full paradox, full dragoon gear. So once he gets dragoon gear, he should be around 7k health, but still their health lacks and their resistance also lacks. As you can see, it's 34%. So but their damage is high and their critical is high. That's the only good thing about Myth. They are great for damage, not so great for defensive or defense capabilities. So that is why they're number 6. So let's go ahead and go to the number 5 school. All right, guys. For number 5, it's kind of in between number 5 and number 4. Fire is the number 5 school for defense. They have great resist, but you just don't see Fire really going into tank for everyone. Balance is they have a little bit less resist, but Balance has a lot more tanking capabilities than Fire does when it comes to the shields, which is why Balance is number 4 on this list instead of where Fire is. They could swap, but Fire is more offensive, so that is why Fire is below Balance on this list. And yeah, so Fire is an all-around school. They are mainly offensive, but they're a powerhouse in the game. You got high damage. Their resistance is great for a damage school, and their critical is also amazing as well. So fire is just a beast of a school. You just can't go wrong with their stats. So I put them at number 5 because they're more offensive, and you don't really see a fire wizard going in to tank the hits for the team. You don't see that often. Like, you can if you want. If your team's like all storm, then it makes sense you'll tank if you're a fire. But like in reality, you are most likely not going to tank as fire. So that is why fire is at number 5. So let's go ahead and go to number 4, which is balance. All right, number 4 slot. You guys saw this coming. I said it earlier. Balance is the number 4 for the best defensive school in the game. They have the elemental shields and the spirit shields to help protect your teammates. But they're number 4 mainly because of the tower shield's existence. If the tower shield didn't exist, balance will be higher on this list. But since balance shield, not balance shield, tower shield exists, that just doesn't happen much. Plus, they have weakness to help weaken the enemy too, which helps boost their defensive capabilities. And their resistance is not half bad. If I had Dragoon gear, this resistance would be higher. Also, balance makes like great jades. Like, they make for great jades and all. So if you put a life mastery and you wear full jade and you blade your friends and also have some healing spells, balance is good at being a tank. So balance can be a tank if there's no one else in the group who has better tanking capabilities than balance. But balance isn't really a very tanky school as the other ones that are above balance on this list. So let's go ahead and move on to number 3. Alright guys, welcome to the number 3 best defensive school in the game. So life is pretty tanky. They have great resist, and they can also of course heal and put absorbs on your friends. And they just make for great jades and are able to tank a lot of damage. And their health is really good as well. One of the best in the game. So this is why life is in the top 3 for defensive capabilities. Also, they could pretty much swap in between the other two, the top 3, which of course is life, death, and ice. So that is why life is pretty much number 3. The other 2 are above life, but slightly above life just because of their own reasons, and they have a lot more better spells to help protect the team from the enemy, which is why they're above life. But yeah, life has great resist, and of course they can heal and put absorbs on your team members, which is why they're at number 3. So let's go ahead and move on to number 2 now. Alright guys, for number 2 we have death. So death is also a very tanky school. They have a lot of spells that are capable of making the enemy hit like hardly anything on your team, which is bad juju, virulence, plague. Like, they have a lot of good debuffs for the enemies, and they can really help the team out when it comes to defense. Plus, their resistance is one of the best in the game as well. Like, my death right now has 40% resistance, and this is just with paradox gear as well. And so yeah, they can really pack a punch and also really help the team out. Like, they have infection, which makes the enemy heal less for themselves. Also, they have mass infection. Of course, you got plague, beguile, virulent plague. I don't really know how to pronounce that. Bad juju, one of the most useful spells in the game for if a death wizard jades up and just spams bad juju, bosses won't be able to do hardly anything to your team, which makes death one of the best tanks slash defensive characters in the game. Also, they have mass infection and a whole bunch of other useful spells, which is why death wizards are at number 2 on this list. So let's go ahead and head to number 1. Alright guys, number 1 on this list we have Ice. You guys probably guessed it. Ice has the highest resistance and highest health in a game. So they are very tanky, and when you Jade up and put a life mastery on this guy, they will be able to take all the hits no problem. And you can easily get 100% universal resist if you have the right stats and the right pet. So this school is the highest on this list just because of those capabilities. So Ice is the best defensive school in the game. They also have the tower shield, stun blocks, they got legion shield, frozen armor, ice armor, and bunch of taunts as well. Plus they can remove ticks and steal ticks as well from the enemy. This school is just a great defensive school and easy to use. And they also get a free Shadow Sentinel and Chrysalis when you quest there, which gives you even more block and even more minus incoming from the enemy and helps protect your team even more. So this school was made to tank for the other schools, and which is why it is number 1 on this list. So let's go ahead and head to the next category, which will be the supportive category. The supportive category, again, is just how much a school supports the team, whether it is shielding, healing, weakness, blinding the enemy, whatever, or even blading. Like, it is just how much support does this school give to all the other schools, and which one is the best to help the team out the most when it comes to supporting everyone. So this is the most tanky school. This category is similar to the supportive category. It's just that these schools can take this was pretty much who can take the most damage without dying first. So yeah, Ice holds a crown for number 1 in the defensive category. So yeah, that is number 1 here. Let's go ahead and head for the worst school in the supportive category. Alright guys, welcome back. So we are with the supportive category now with the worst school. The number 7th spot for the worst school in the supportive category goes to Storm yet again. So Storm, they don't really have many supportive capabilities. They can stun enemies with their Storm Lord, but they have healing current as well. But healing current, I mean, it does it's a toss up. Like, you just don't know what it's gonna heal, and it's probably like one of the only most useful supportive spells that Storm has here. You can do 100, 400, or 1,000 healing. So Storm doesn't really have many support spells. They're mainly just a damage school. I mean, you also have Enfeeble to remove all the charms from the enemy, and you also have spells like Cleanse as well to help remove a negative, which Cleanse is one of the most useful spells in the game. But Storm sadly doesn't have enough support spells to take the cake over the other schools, which is why they're the worst school in this category. But they could be a lot better in some other categories, which we'll talk about later in this video, so stay tuned for that. So let's go ahead and head for the number 6 school though. Alright guys, welcome back. So we're at the number 6 best supportive school in the game, which is Fire. Fire is the 6th best supportive school in the game. They're better than Storm just because they have a little bit more useful spells to help support the team. But again, Fire is more offensive. Same thing with Storm. They're more offensive schools, so that's why they're so low on this list. And the most useful spells they have to help support the team is Smoke Screen here. They also have Steel Charm and some other spells such as Choke to stun all enemies. And yeah, they have some decent spells to help support the team, such as those 3. But other than that, they really don't have much. All the rest is just hitting spells and overtimes and stuff, or blow up the overtime as well. So this school is mainly for damage, not so much as supporting as well, just like Storm, which is why they're so low on this list for support schools. So let's go ahead and move on to number 5 now. Alright guys, welcome back to the number 5 school on this list for the best supportive school in the game. Now Myth is a little bit better than Fire when it comes to supporting, just because they have some useful spells. They also have a lot of minions that can help the team out if you have a 3-person team, but minions don't really help too much and not as supported as yourself. So always rely on yourself, not really on your minions, because minions will steal your traps and stuff. And all the other schools that are above Myth just have better supportive capabilities, which is why Myth is at number 5. Myth also has Cleanse Ward, which removes a negative ward on yourself. Also Pierce to help pierce through a single shield for the enemy, so you guys can hit. They also have Stun, Blinding Light to stun the enemies, and they have Shatter to remove all shields from the enemy, which is one of the most useful spells in the game. They also have Shift to shift an overtime onto a target if they do a big overtime on you. And of course Dimension Shift, trade all hanging effects with a minion. So they have some very useful spells to help support the team. Also Earthquake, but Earthquake kind of ruins the fun if your team puts traps on the minions and the boss, because Earthquake also removes all the traps and stuff you guys put on the enemy. So this is only useful if there's no traps on anyone and you just want to get rid of all the enemy's blades. That's one way to use that spell. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Myth for being the number 5 position and why they're at number 5. Let's go ahead and head to the number 4 school. Alright guys, for the number 4 school on this list we have Ice. So Ice is pretty supportive when it comes to shielding, but not really anything else. But when it comes to shields though, they can easily do that, but everyone can easily learn Tower Shield and also Stun Block. So we're not going to really count those, but they do have Stun, Frozen Armor, Legion Shield, and stuff like that. But besides those and like cooldown, there's really nothing else about Ice that really puts them above the other ones that are on this list that's above Ice currently. So Ice right now is in the number 4 slot for the best supportive school in the game for max level. So let's go ahead and move on to number 3 now. Alright, for number 3 we have Death. Again, Death is pretty up there when it comes to one of the best schools in the game. They're just an overall all-around great school. So number 3, Death is the 3rd best supportive school in the game in my opinion. So Death at max level is really good. They have a lot of weakness spells to help support the team and make the enemy do less damage to you. And also they have some good healing spells such as Sacrifice. And yeah, they can also beguile the enemy and make the enemy attack for you. And yeah, they just have great spells. They can also blade your team with Dark Pack, give power, like power pips and stuff to your friends. They are just regular pips here. So they have some really good spells that can help support the team. And they can also do some damage as well. We'll talk about that later in the DPS category. But Death is just a great school in just supporting your team with weaknesses and stuff, which is why they're number 3 on this list. And yeah, they can pretty much be number 2, but the number 2 school is a lot more useful in a different way. So let's go ahead and talk about that school now. Alright guys, for number 2 we have Balance. So Balance is a great supportive school. It was pretty much made for support. This school is the best for blading your team and keeping your team pretty much all set for a hit. So Balance is just great for getting your damage output up for the entire team. They have Balance Blade. They also have Weakness to help weaken the enemy, Precision to help your accuracy for all schools. They got Hex, Black Mantle to make the enemy miss their chance on summoning a spell. And yeah, they also get some of these, like they get the Elemental Blades and Traps and Spirit Blades and Traps for free. And they also have Blade Storm to blade all friends. So this school is just great for support. They can also donate pips to a target as well. So yeah. Also, their healing spells aren't too bad. I mean, you have Availing Hands and also Helping Hands for healing, which is pretty good. And yeah, Balance can be a pretty good Jade school as well. They're not too bad when it comes to jading. So yeah, that is pretty much why Balance is number 2. But the number 1 school on this list is slightly better in a way. And probably one of the most useful schools in the game for support. And you guys probably already know what it is, so let's go ahead and head right to the number 1 school now. Alright guys, for the number 1 school for the best supportive school in the game, you guys probably have guessed it now. It is Life. Now, Life has a lot of healing spells. The majority of its spells is mostly healing spells and also some supportive spells for your team. So Life just has a lot of good spells to help support the team, such as Triage. And they also can use Minor Blessing to help spam when they're in Shadow Seraphim to spam Absorbs. And Guiding Light, Dryad, Guidance, like they just have a lot of supportive spells to help the team. Like Sprite, Brilliant Light, Unicorn, Master Triage, you guys get the picture. They just have a lot of good healing spells and spells that can help the team. You can also get Pigsy, which is it's the best 4-pip healing spell in the game. And yeah, so Life is just amazing when it comes to healing and keeping your team alive and help support the team a lot. This is why Life is number 1 on this list. They are one of the most useful schools to have on a team just because they can keep everyone alive and be very efficient when it comes to healing. They're also great for creating crit heals as well. But since crit heals has been debuffed a little bit, everyone's mainly going for the outgoing heals now. So when you have high outgoing and when you jade up, Life is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to supporting a team, and it's very hard to take down your team members when you're doing that. So yeah, Life is number 1 when it comes to support. Balance is almost there when it comes to number 1, but not quite. Balance is great for support as well, and also Death, but Life is just the best support school in my opinion. They just help keep the team alive, and everyone wants a Life on their team when it comes to some of the more advanced dungeon. But yet again, some of the other schools can just put a Life mastery on. If they have Pixie or heal spell, they can also do the same thing a Life can. But when it comes to outgoing, Life takes the crown, and Life is the best when it comes to healing the team up from pretty much no health at all. So there you have it. There's the best support school in the support category for the max level wizards. Now let's go ahead and head for the DPS. So the worst school for DPS, I'm already on it, which is Life again. So Life is unfortunately the worst DPS school in the game in my opinion. They just don't have many hitting spells as the other schools, and they can be pretty bad when it comes to that as well. Plus, they're more of a support school. You don't really see many Life wizards focusing on hitting in like the major dungeons, which is also why they're on the bottom of this list. You just don't see them doing that. If you're like maybe with in a group of 2 or a group of 3 without a really hitting school, and you have more damage and critical than the other team members, then you can probably be the hitter. But mainly Life is there to help heal and tank most of the time in some of the more crazy dungeons, such as the Devourer, or Renegade Druid, or Storm Titan. Life there will most likely tank and heal the entire time, not really hitting the enemy. So this is why Life is at the very bottom of the DPS category for damage per second. So yeah, other than that, Life has some pretty decent damage though. They have my Life has 140 damage for level 130, but their spells aren't really the greatest when it comes to damage. Spiny Sword is pretty good though. Also, some of the Shadow Pip spells aren't too bad at all. Forest Lord is also pretty decent for 7 pips. So, yeah. This school is not too bad when it comes to the damage. It's just that they're mainly a support school. They're not really a damage school. When they're on a team with people, they're not really doing the damage. It's usually a storm, a fire, or some other school. You don't really see Life doing damage much unless they have more damage and critical than your other team members. Then that might be a little bit different. So let's go ahead and go to the number 6 school now. Alright guys, for number 6, surprise, surprise, it's Ice. You guys will probably see a pattern here going up the DPS list now. So Ice, you know, it used to be one of the 3 best hitting schools in the game in the past, but ever since the latest updates and stuff, Ice just been having, like, their spells have been going down in damage. Like, their spells have been becoming a little bit worse and worse each time, which is why Ice is number 6 on this list for the best DPS school. So Ice is not really a hitting school anymore. King's Isle is really trying to focus on making this a tanking school instead. So their spells are starting to take a massive hit or a massive dive towards a higher level. As you guys can see, Forest Lord at level 48 only does 460 damage. If we compare this to not Forest Lord, Frost Giant, I can't talk. I'm thinking about Forest Lord. So Forest Lord does about 600 damage. Frost Giant here for Ice, 460, and stun all enemies. This is pretty weak compared to it. Also, some of the other spells it has, like Lord of Winter and stuff, they're also pretty. I mean, Lord of Winter here is decent, but it just doesn't do as much damage as some of the other schools. Also, Scion of Ice is alright, not the best. Also, the shadow hits. Abominable Weaver has taken a hit recently from the update, so it's not as good, but it's still a pretty good spell. It's just that Ice has pretty much been nerfed when it comes to damage, and King's Isle is trying to focus this school as a tank school, not too much of a hitting school. And also, when you're max level and you go in dungeons, you don't really see Ice's hit too much. I mean, they're pretty much a secondary hitter when they need to be, but they're mainly just going in battles first almost every single time you're with the team, and just soak up the damage from the boss. They're not really like focusing on hitting. They're also helping Blade the hitter as well. So this school is not really a hitting school or DPS school when it comes to damage and pretty much farming for materials and stuff. They're not very quick on that either. So this is why they're at number 6. Let's go ahead and head for the number 5 school now. Alright guys, for the 5th best DPS school, we have Balance. So Balance has gotten a little bit of a buff since the latest update for some of its spells, which is why it's slightly above Ice on this list, is because of that update. Balance is a pretty decent school when it comes to damage, actually. They, in recent update, their spells do crazy damage now. For Power Nova got buffed, Raw got debuffed. So yeah, here's Raw. It's gotten a debuff, and Power Nova's gotten a buff. It does 665 to all enemies now for 7 pips. Hydra's gotten a buff. Chimera's gotten a buff. Sabertooth got a little bit of a nerf, not too bad, but it's pretty much the same amount of damage as Lord of Winter. So Balance is just slightly above Ice because of that. And also Nested Fury does crazy amount of damage, one of the best AoEs in the game now. So Balance is just great now when it comes to some of its spells, which is why it is number 5 on this list. So let's go ahead and head for the number 4 school. Alright guys, the 4th best school for damage output is Death. So Death has some pretty good spells, and their damage is also pretty good. So Death is just an all-around school, as you guys noticed probably from this list. They've been in the top 3 2 times, and they're pretty much in the middle now for damage. So as you guys can see, Death is just an all-around school when it comes to max level, and they're just really an all-around great school. So you can't go wrong with Death. They can go either way in all 3 categories. But when Death, when it comes to damage, Death can do some pretty great things. They have Feint to help boost damage a lot. Also the Curse and stuff as well. And the Death spells aren't bad at all. They're actually really good. Scarecrow does 590 to all enemies for the 7 pip spell. Half of that is transferred back to health to you. And also their rank 10 spells not bad at all. And yeah, their spells is not bad. Like Death has some really good spells. Wing Sorrow is not too bad for a single hit. They did debuff Lulu a little bit. It's 675 now instead of like 850. So that's been nerfed quite a bit. Scion Death has been nerfed a little bit as well. It's 850 now, so that's pretty bad. But other than that, Death is a pretty good damage school too. So it has my Death at max level has 141 damage. So he can do some serious damage, and yeah, so the other 3 schools above Death just does a lot more damage and when it comes to damage output, which is why Death is at number 4. So let's go ahead and head for the number 3 school. Alright guys, for number 3 on this list we have Myth. So Myth has really good damage and really good critical. And that is pretty much why they're in the number 3 spot on this list. And yeah, they are pretty much the Storm of the Spirit schools. When I say Spirit schools, I mean it's between Death, Life, and Myth. Myth is pretty much the Storm of those 3 schools. They do a lot of damage and critical for that. So that is why Myth is number 3. Also, Myth has some really good damage spells, like Orthrus now. It does 700 to all enemies. You got Basilisk, which is a really good spell. Celestial Calendar, one of the best 10 pip spells. It does 930, 990, and also steals a pip for 10 pips. Scion Myth is also really good. Snake Charmer, one of the best 4 pip shadow pip spells. Also Witch's House Call is really good for a single hit for Myth as well. So Myth just has some really good spells. You can't go wrong with Myth when it comes to damage, which is why they're the number third best school when it comes to damage. So that's the 3rd best school for damage, guys. And let's go ahead and head for the number 2. Alright guys, we're at the number 2 spot, which is Storm. Now sadly, after the recent update, Storm has been it's been getting a little bit of a debuff when it comes to its spells. Like some of its spells has been nerfed, especially Bugs. If Bugs didn't get that big of a nerf like it did in the last update, they could have been number 1 still. But since they took away the Enfeeble on the Bugs is it's not as useful as it used to be. And also they nerfed Sirens a little bit as well. So Storm has taken a hit in the last update, but they're the masters of critical. They crit every single time. They have great damage as well. Storm and Fire are pretty much equals when it comes to damage and critical. But Storm is the king of crit. So when it comes to critical, Storm it takes the lead on that. But when it comes to overall damage and the latest update and the new spells, Fire unfortunately has barely passed Storm. So all you Storm lovers, for when it comes to hitting, I'm sorry, Fire has overtaken Storm in the latest update. And yeah, so let me show you guys the spells so you guys understand here. So Tempest is still a great spell. It is still one of the best spells in the game when it comes to farming. But yeah, Storm Owls has been nerfed. Sirens has been nerfed. Leviathan has been nerfed. So, like, a lot. And Iron Sultan's been nerfed. Rosolko's been nerfed. Glowbug has been nerfed a lot. Glowbugs used to do more than 1,000 damage to all enemies, and it had an enfeeble to all enemies as well. Now it only does 940 to all enemies, and that's it for a Shadow Pip spell. Rosolka is still really good, but since the latest update, this spell has been a lot less useful now, and Storm has fallen from the throne of damage in the latest update. If it was 2019, Storm would be the #1 school, but it's 2020 now. Storm's the second best damage school in the game. I'm sorry for all you Storm lovers. That's just how I see it. It's my opinion. But yeah, my Storm has 169 damage and max crit. Though you can get 175 damage and max crit as a Storm, but since the latest update, unfortunately, I think Fire is a tad bit better when it comes to damage now. So let's go ahead and talk about Fire at #1. Alright guys, for #1, I've said it before, Fire at the recent update in 2020 has overtaken Storm as the best DPS or damage per second school for max level in the game. The Fire just can do more damage than Storm with their damage output. They're not better in critical, but the latest update with their spells, some of the spells have been buffed and are a little bit more useful than Storm. Minus the Tempest. Tempest is still one of the best AoEs in the game. But Fire has Meteor, and Fire Dragon has become a god-like spell for Fire recently at level 48, and it has gotten a huge buff. That's over. Just look at it. It's like 900 something damage overall for a 7-pip spell. That's insane. So yeah, Fire just has been it's been getting a little bit buff for some of its spells. Some spells has been nerfed a little bit, not too much, for Fire, for some of its 4 pips. Iron Sultan does like so Iron Sultan does do a little bit more damage than Scorching Scimitars, but overall though, Fire just has great spells. Like its 5 pips, so FFA here does great damage for 5 pips. And same thing, Raging Bull does great damage for 6 pips as well. Plus it gives a minus 40% inaccuracy debuff to all enemies. So that is great. These spells are still really good. Sun Serpent is still really good. And yeah, Scion of Fire is still great. Like nothing's wrong with Fire besides Ifrit. Poor little Ifrit here. Only does a minus 45 debuff on whoever you use this on, and the damage has been slightly nerfed as well. So yeah, Fire has been nerfed a little bit on some of its spells, but it's gotten a big buff on Fire Dragon, and some of its spells have actually gotten slightly better. Like Raging Bull, I think is slightly better thanks to the minus 40% smoke screen, pretty much added on to that. But it hasn't been as nerfed as Storm has gotten a bigger nerf than Fire did in the latest update, which is why I think Fire is slightly better than Storm when it comes to damage now. I'm sorry guys if you don't think that way like I do, but personally, after playing them all the schools and everything, I think Fire is just slightly better when it comes to damage now after the latest update. If we were back in 2019, if I made this video back in 2019, I would say Storm is they take the crown for the best DPS school. But since it's 2020 and after the recent nerf update, Fire is slightly better than Storm now. Not too much, no, though, when it comes to damage. They pretty much have the same damage, but Storm just crits a lot more than Fire does. That's about it, but Fire has the better spells. So that's pretty much it for this video now, guys. As you can see, my Fire pretty much has the same damage. We made a video on which school was also the best starting school. Go ahead and check that video out. I'll probably link it at the very end of this video with my subscribe button so you guys can see it if you want to check it out as well. And feel free to check all of my other guides out, guys. I have a whole bunch of other guides on my channel. And when it comes to helping, when it comes to farming, you know, or talking about the mounts in the game and stuff like that's coming in a future video here shortly. But yeah, I made a lot of guides. If you are curious about some other things in the game, feel free to check them out. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It helps me out a lot and helps support my channel and helps me know that you guys like my Wiz content, so I make more for you. So it's a win-win when it comes to that. So yeah, again, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.